I decided to test the conservation for the concrete operational stage in Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development. Piaget theorized that this stage lasts around 7 to 11 years of age and is characterized by development of organized and rational thinking. Piaget considered the concrete stage a major turning point in child's cognitive development because it marks the beginning of logical or operational thought. The child is now mature enough to use logical thought or operations, but can only apply logic to physical objects. I'm going to test my neurotypical newly turned 6-year-old black-white American daughter and my atypical 5-year-old black-white American son who has autism. My hypothesis is age has little to do with intelligence and cognitive ability, and that my daughter will be able to conserve during the pre-operational stage, and that my son will be unable to. My two participants are from Pennsylvania, and an informed consent was obtained by their mother, myself, since they are under the age of 18. Their mother fully understood the experimental study before beginning. The experiment began by developing the conservation ability to question perception and reason about reality, to use logic instead of perception to make determinations for what can appear obvious but is not. I began with the length test. I placed two of the same length pipe cleaners in front of the subjects. Once one was moved, neither of the children were able to state that they remained the same length. Then I measured volume. I had 2 bowls of goldfish with the same amount. I then poured one of the bowls of goldfish into a smaller container. My daughter was able to say why they were still the same amount. My son never agreed that the original bowls contained the same amount. We then moved on to the matter test. I used 2 green balls of Play-Doh of equal size. When I flattened one, my daughter was able to state why they are still the same amount of Play-Doh, and my son was not. Moving on, I tested numbers. I gave the subjects a whole graham cracker and myself a whole graham cracker. But when I broke my graham cracker into 4 pieces, my daughter was able to comprehend and converse as to why we still had the same amount. My son was not. In fact, he thought his 1 whole graham cracker was more than my 4 sections. The next test was a volume test. The test began with an understanding that the cups had an equal amount of water. 1 cup was poured into a bigger cup, and my daughter was able to explain why it still had the same amount of water. My son was not. Lastly, I wanted to test the numbers conversion again. So I placed 5 goldfish in 2 rows, and I then spread the top row of goldfish out. My daughter was able to state why, even though the top row appeared to have more in it, they still had the same amount, and then it was in fact just spread out. My son never got to this part of the test as he couldn't agree that the 2 original rows had the same amount of goldfish, even after counting them. I was able to disprove Piaget's proposition that children's inability to conserve is due to weakness in the way children think during the pre-operational stages of ages 2 to 6. Given that my daughter was able to converse volume, matter, number, and after the testing concluded, she recalled that she was wrong when she answered the experiment on length, and she changed her response that the pipe cleaners were in fact remained the same length, but moving them made it appear that one was longer. There are limitations with my study. People with autism spectrum disorder, like my son, are thought to have specific profile of cognitive strengths and weaknesses, difficulties appreciating others' thoughts and feelings, problems regulating and controlling their behavior, and an enhanced ability to perceive details. But few studies have tracked children's cognitive skills over time. Due to this, further research would be beneficial in researching the cognitive abilities of children with autism to see if they are able to meet the stages of development at appropriate ages as outlined in Piaget's theory on child development.